do this some. It's really very meaty. Tana, we're on page Taf Kuf Zain. Tana Lamado. So we learn like this. Hi Tiferes Kollel Barachme B'Kollel Bedina. Now he's talking about Zair Anpin. Ki Zecha B'Tiferes Zair Anpin Kollel Barachme B'Kollel Bedin. Ki B'Sov Shlish Elyon the Tiferes Mistayim Yisod Ima. Now this is where we're getting into the meat here. Is that that's where the Yisod of Ima stops at the end of the first third, which is really at the end of the chest, I guess. So since we have all these Chasadim Gavuras coming through Ima, the Yisod of Ima, Shachatiferis, Kalu Barachim, Mitzad Chasadim, B'Kollel Bedin, Mitzad Gavuros, and since they're pouring into Zair Anpin, therefore he has these two sides. Vispashet Rachamim b'Dechur v'Chasadim Shehem b'Chinis Rachamim Mispashtim b'Guf Zair Anpin. So the Rachamim goes into the body of Zair Anpin. V'Chem Nizgado Kol Gufo, and from this his whole body grows from the Chasadim that are coming in. 1 second. Then he says Visaver v'Nakim Lisnar Achra. Then it passes through v'Nakiv, it makes a hole in the other side. V'Gavur shehem b'Bechinas Din Avro Derek Nekev shebechazad Zair Anpin l'tzad Achrayim. Shechu b'Makom Abidus HaNukva v'Shechel Zair Anpin, which is where the Nukva is located. V'Takem Mal Yidor the Nukva, and this at this point it creates the innards, or from the diaphragm downwards, of the Nukva. V'Os Tikkun Ma'atzel. Asa ma'ayim b'nukva b'koach ha'gevuros ha'elu. So these gevuros, they're able to put in order her digestive system. Is the kandach ba'atza ma'acha b'sitra d'dina. B'nimsa shenistakein me'acha b'tzad d'din. So therefore we see that her innards. So here we're talking about probably her tani. So her tani here we're talking about is I don't know exactly. That's Tani's not exactly right. So anyway, it's Tiferes. It's the lower part of Tiferes. V'nimsa shenisak me'acha b'tzad din. So her innards are made on the side of din. Shuhu hagavuros. Tana. So we learn like this. The model is takein dechura b'sitre. Kicha dechura b'shuchav Zair Anpin nisakein b'hatzad shalom. So what is his side? Shuhu tzad hapanim, which is on the face. So now we're going this way. So he's built with on the face side. Asher sham he marachamim, which is where you find the rachamim. Why? He says because Hasidim is pashted inside hapanim. That's where they go. They spread towards the. Let's say they come in the middle. They spread towards the front. The tzad hapanim shuhu bechinas hazachar. V'hagavuros mispashtim tzad ha'ach shehu bechinas hanukva, which is where the nukva is going to. V'chasadim heim ikur tikkun Zair Anpin. So they're actually, that's the mayim amagadli mesailon, that they grow it up. B'masan usmanya v'arba'in tikkuna deklilin bay. So he says he's a v'tikkun Zair Anpin. The Messiah v'arbayim u'shmona tikunim v'kolulim b'Zair Anpin. Now here we get to this. This is actually the number. Now he said it Messiah, and then he said shmona, and then he said, I'm just noticing arbayim. He took it in a slightly different order. I'm not sure why, but he said maybe because it means I don't know. So he says shehem aramach evarim shel Zair Anpin shenisakto al yedecha v'chasadim, which are built and put into this pattern by the Chasadim. So the Ramach mitzvos asay shehem Chasadim. Now, just thinking about that, so he says that the 5 Chasadim actually represent the 248 mitzvos asay, and he said because the word they split into this. Minachom lego uminachom labar. V'yesh bechem bechinas evarim pnimim. So there is some that have to do with the organs, I imagine. V'yesh mehem, and then there are also others of them. Bechinas evarim kitzonim. So outer limbs, bones maybe. I'm not sure what he meant. V'omer od minachom rachame minachom dinah. So some of these represent rachamim and wasad of dinah. We're talking about the chasadim now. Ke'af she'ikar tikkun Zair Anpin hu mitzad chesadik omor. So even though we understand that mostly it's made out of chesadim, im kol zecha begama gevuros mispashtin b'Zair Anpin. But with all of this, even the gevuros spread into Zair Anpin. ולכן יש בזר אנפין הם בבחינת רחמים שהם בחסדים וכן בבחינת דינים שהם בגבורה. So he said there was a split in them, but they're still inside of Zair Anpin. כוחו כדינת יצאחה דרך בדינת האחרוי. וכול אלך הגבורה. So all of these gevuros that we're talking about, שהם בבחינת דינים נאחז בצפשת בצד האח. So we said they go around to the achor, shel Zair Anpin. שהוא בבחינת דינים, which is the aspect of dinim. But Talmud Dover, so what is this? What's the reason? The Nukva is Pashatas Taman, because the Nukva, she spreads out there. That's where she comes out. The Fisha Eilach Gavuros, Haim Litzor being in parts of a Nukva, they're building the parts of the Nukva, the Zair Anpin. And so therefore they're spreading onto the back of the Zair Anpin, which is where the Nukva is located. And then they join in and they spread on her side. They join together. And then they start spreading onto the side of the nukva, as parts of a nukva, and they're able to rebuild the parts of the nukva. Tikkun of the parts of a nukva, because that's the only way she's built. She is built as a gevura, so therefore don't fight with her. Okay, going on. So we learn like this: Hamisha Aryasa is Galianba. Now this is interesting here. He says Hamisha Arayos Shehem Sot Chamesh Gevuros. So he says the 5 Gevuros have to do with these nakednesses. So he says Gevuros Mizgalos V'Nirshamim Pu'ulosam. So they're revealed and they're impressed. The deeds that they're going to do, or the Pu'ulosam, the work that they do. B'Hamisha B'Koma B'Nukva in 5 different places in the Nukva. So these are different 5s. Shehem Kol, that's her voice, the Sayer, and then he said the Shuk, the leg, the Yad, the hand, and the Regel. She is Bar L'Chalon, as he's going to get into this more as he goes on. He said, Besitra the Dina Chamisha. Ve'eda HaChamesh Arayos, He Mitzad Chamesh Gevuros. So these 5 Arayos, let's say these, and they are nakednesses, I guess that's what Arayos means. He said, so we see that these 5s working together, the gevuros, the nakednesses, and the dinim. She gets all of this from Zair Anpin, the Tzork Ben Yana. And why? Because she could be built. And since that's what they are, so therefore, in other words, they're dangerous. I guess that's what it means. So he says, therefore, she needs to cover up those places, because this is a place where the klipa zeroes in. V'dinim chamisha is pashtam b'ma'asan of arba'in tamanya archen. So then he says, ve'elu chamisha dinim. Now we've got these dinim now. That we're counting, Ugavuros mispashtim b'masayim v'arbaim shmona derachim. They spread into 248 different ways. That this is inside of the nukva. Shehem haramach evarim shal nukva, which are the nukva. So we're always thinking that the nukva is associated with a different number, and this is. Let's hear some more. So he says, an nukva. Hanivnim mekoach hakavura, so Ela, which are built to 248, her 248 organs. I guess that's because it's the same thing. It's organs versus organs and limbs versus limbs. Amnam afal pisha hakavuras v'chadinim is pashtim b'kol ramach evari hanukva. So even though they go to her 248, b'kol makom iker giloi v'rosha and pa'ulas achamesh gavuras v'adinim. So again, his words are, he says that the main place where the actual gevuros actually come out, what's the word, act or work, that's in these 5 places that we mentioned that have to do with erva. Kamosha Amro. V'hoki ta'ana, so this is actually the language that we want to hear. V'kein lamado, ki elu cheimcha chamisha b'kombas and nikroim erva be'isha, so these are the places we considered to be erva in a woman. It says the kol be'isha erva, ser be'isha erva, shok be'isha erva, yad be'isha erva, regel be'isha erva. So now he says he's just quoting, actually just bringing here the Zohar. But there is, even though you're saying this, there is this place you could ask like this. The afal gab the srin ilan lo shinuya chavranu shahare shtei arayas, two of these achronos yad v'regel shamarnu lo nosh decha. This was not actually brought in halacha. The Gemara over there in Brachos, he said, "Ki amrach of rock, al kol, seir, and shok." It only over there, it only mentions three. Shehem erva v'lo yoser. V'atam adavos. What's the reason? Ki eilach b'shtecha b'rayis yad v'regel chem sod shtei gevuros netzach and hod. Now let's just go a little bit slower here. What was the reason why the Gemara left it out? The rest of it out is because these two, they represent netzach and hod. Now, exactly to my mind, how I could hear hod, because hod's a leg, right? So, excuse me, I said regel, rather, that's a leg. But he's also concluding in that card would be the next part would be the hand. Okay, so he says that's because they represent netzach and hod. Sha'af shehen gevuros kasha, so even though we understand these are sphere gevuros, because those hem gevuros shena'asa bechem hamtoka, but they're sweetened gevuros. So therefore, those two parts are gevuros, all right, but they're sweetened gevuros, but mekomos anikroim erba. So therefore, they don't bring it into that. Now, this whole discussion right here is a discussion that I never heard before. So, where that actually goes is why is it mumtak? Maybe he's going to tell us. The strain ilan yater me'erva ilan. And looking at it another way. Hare elach shnei makomos yad v'regel nachshavim erva od yoser min ashlosha b'shona shehem kol shar and shok. It's worse than them. Ki shtei gevuros netzach v'hod, because those gevuros which are netzach and hod, hem gevuros yoser kashos min shar gevuros. These are gevuros. That is what he wants to say. They're much more difficult mitzad shorshim. Why? Because of where they come from. So in other words, they're roots. So at any rate, let's see if any more is explained about that. I don't think so. Okay, so we have some facts over there, and they're either more severe or they're less severe because they were sweetened, but I don't know where they were sweetened, and maybe they're going to talk about it a little bit later. So let's get a little more deeper. He said, so he says, what does that mean? He says, keep parts of Zair Anpin. He says, looking at the parts of Zair Anpin, this pashet lamata, it spreads downwards, starts going downwards. Now again, tikkunov means is that it is processing light and making it smaller. So limiting the light, that's the tikkunim, so it starts growing that way in its different midos. Shem netzach hod yisod shalo, which is spreading into his nai. Now, what we're talking about here, he said the word was his pasha techuda v'istakem b'tikunoi. So he starts going on, and he's not going to make. Now we're seeing that in Zair Anpin, and I assume he means it's coming from the 5 chasadim that are building him up. He's now going to build up the lower part, which is the netzach hod yisod. So yistakem, they are then put into performance. And then he goes in and he builds the benimis of the sod shel Zair Anpin. Because of the chasadim that are joining into that place. So this is called the tikkuna of the covering, of the very pure covering. So what's happening now is that we're focusing on the inside of the yisod of Zair Anpin. So he said once again, the tikkun that's affected by the chasadim, Shel Yisod Zair Anpin, and they're now in the Yisod of Zair Anpin. Misakin the Mamtik as a Gavurot Vachadinim Shel Yisod the Nukva Hanikra Ksusadakya. Now let me see, I must have read this wrong. So he says, so once again, he says, the Tikkun Chasada B'Zeh Shel Yisod Zair Anpin, Misakin, so that Tikkun you do there, Mamtik as a Gavurot Vachadinim Shel Yisod the Nukva. So therefore, he's called. They're going to come and they're going to sweeten those gevuros that are coming into the yisod of the nukva. Hanikvah. Now, I think he means that the covering of the chasadim are. I'm not sure what he means. The fishu sus malvish al yisod the Zair Anpin, because it's a covering. It covers over the yisod of Zair Anpin ve'es yichud at the time of the yichud. So it's called the kasusadakya. Exactly what that means, I'm not sure yet. V'hai havaya ama dachya. So he said v'hai yisod, that is yisod, the nukva nikra dachya. So I'm trying to sort out which one is what means which. So he said the yisod of the yisod of the nukva is called dachya, pure, or pure, clean. The fishu yisod the Zair Anpin amislavish bo nikra ama. So because it's called the Amma. So you talk about it Lashon Yichud. So it's Amma Dachya. So it's the two of them together. So he said, Omar Od, he says furthermore, Arucha Dahaku Amma. So the length of this Amma, Malsan V'Arbaim V'Samya Almim, is 248 hidden worlds. Ki Orchon Shel Osaha Amma, Humasayim V'Arbaim U'Shmona Olomis. Shehem Ramach Oros Nelomim, which are the 248 hidden lights. Now, I'm thinking of it like a tube, and the tube is being filled up with these 248 lights, which are collected really from the body of Zair Anpin. Episode Ramach Chasadim. So now that's the same thing about the split in the 5 Chasadim into 248. Shall mitzvah saseh hamispashte beramach avarim shall Zair Anpin, which spread into the 248 limbs of Zair Anpin, ka'amor la'el, which we talked about previously. Shekulim nechlala betipas hachesed hayeredes the yisod. So now you have all of this loaded up, and they're incorporated in the drops of chesed that are coming out of the yisod. Now here he means the yisod of Zair Anpin. So he says v'lakach Gam ha'ama shuhu ha'kol ha'kli l'gabelas tipas ha'ramach asadim. So it's actually a long tube or kli to makabel these chasadim. Gam came b'bechinas orcho ramach alomo. So therefore it has the same hidden same dimensions in order to be able to hold the 248 lights. Kifi orcha chasadim hanikta besocha, because of the lights of the chasadim that are going into it. So now he's giving a real detailed look at this. V'kuhul talyan b'puma da Amma. So all of them wind up at the mouth of the Amma. In other words, the opening in the Amma. V'kol eloch ha'ramach hasadim taluyim u'miskabsim b'pi ha'Amma. So they're at the mouth of the Amma. Shehi itras yisod shel Zair Anpin. So it's he's telling us this is the tip. They all wind up being pushed towards the tip. V'lechein ma'asher amarnu shemidas kli yisod orach ramach alamos lo na'emer ha'ama atzma. That size, when he says it's 248 hidden lights or olomos, lo na'emer al ha'ama atzma, not talking about the amma that has the room for 248. Elo na'emer al itras yisod, the taras yisod, but it's really talking about where the light ultimately winds up in the tip, which has room for 248 lights. But the Yisod itself, so it's more than that. It's much more, probably more, I don't know, it's more. Okay, anyway, moving on a little bit. So it says, the Iskre Yud, and it's called by the name Yud, Yud Vav Daled, V'hi Ataras Yisod. The Ataras Yisod is like a tip, and it's called Yud. HaNikra Os Yud, Ki ha-yisod atzmo hu sod os vav. So the yisod is like what they always say, it's a small vav. So os vav. V'chatara hu os yud. So now you have a vav and a yud. You have a connection there between those two. So he said, "V'keven de isk alia yud." Now you pume the ama. So now you have all this bunched up in the tip of the ama. V'keven sheniglas or yud. So this is or called yud. Shuhu peha ama, which is actually the mouth of this organ. Shel Zair Anpin. The hind kushin is gala itras hayisod ataras hayisod mina arlo. So he says now there's an arla that covers over this. And so when you reveal that arla from the yisod, shehi klipas noga hahofefes. So again, it's probably important to know that it's a klipas noga. I mean, this has some good qualities to it, but it's not something you want at all. Shehi klipas noga hahofefes umachasa al the taras yisod Zair Anpin, which is there covering over the yisod of Zair Anpin. Zair Anpin. Mila, and then when we go through circumcision, uperia, and then revealing the underneath part of that covering, v'husra ha'arlo, and then the arlo is completely off. V'nizgala tsuras os yud. You see now what you're looking at is a form in the form of a yud, shel ataras yisod, which is the atara of the yisod. So he says is gale. Chesed ilo oz nizgala besoch ataras yisod. Now, what's happening now at this tip of the yisod is now revealed. Hayisod tipas hachesed ha'elyon kollel b'kol harama chasadim. Now he coins a new phrase here. He says there's something called a chesed ha'elyon. This chesed ha'elyon is a composite, or it has inside of it. It has all of the Ramah Chasadim. So it's like one tipa. They say tipas hachesed. So I think it's one tipa. Let's say v'shorish atipa hazos nimshach al yedera b'metzach de'erik anpin. Now here's another interesting fact. Where does this tipa come from? It comes as a result. It's from by way of the metzach of the Zair Anpin. So how does it work? Amin hachesed ha'elyon shal melech hador. Oh boy. So where is it coming from now? At this point, you're talking about mating, and you're coming back to the Melech Hadar, who's the Mashiach. I guess in my way of thinking, Menachesed the Elyon Shal Melech Hadar B'Sod Shem Mahachodesh. Now you're bringing the Mahachodesh in now, and it's going to rebuild everything perfectly. Then it says like this: V'hai Ama Chesed Hu Iskari. Now this Ama, he says that this organ. Ki gam zeha ama, the ama itself, shihara yisod nikra chesed, it's also called chesed. Why? Al shem tikas or hachesed shebesocha, because it's holding within inside of its head. This now he's refined the 248 to now be encapsulated in a drop. So he says that now because that drop is of chesed is inside of the ama, so therefore the ama is chesed. Shehi besod shem kuvaya b'milu yudin, and what is the drop? Was he talking about the drop? I'm not sure which one is. He means the yisod. He means the drop. He says shehi besod shem kuvaya b'milu yudin ha'ola av kaminyan chesed. So this is he's talking about the tipa itself. The tipa is called a av, which is a gematria of chesed. V'hamili shalo olamu kaminyan ama. Okay, I'm not sure. I'm not really good at those kind of metaphors. So he says you have an amma and you have a chesed. So you have the amma and chesed. Chesed. So that my drash on this would be the mu is a part of chesed, and it means the amma. So amma and chesed, same thing. Batali b'chai pum amma, and it all hangs from this mouth of the amma. Below ikri chesed ad isgalia yud depum amma. So it's not a chesed. It's not called by that name until the mouth of the yud is revealed at the mouth of the amma. B'shem chesed shel yisod toloi bezecha berapez really depends on this mouth. So he said per shel yisod shehi ataras yisod, which is this tip of the yisod. Yisod ein nikra chesed. So it's not a chesed until the yud is in. That's why it's a klipa noga, because it's touching the chesed, but in the meantime it's keeping the chesed from revealing itself. So therefore it says shel pi ha'ama, it's on the pi of the ma b'shehi taras yisod. Then you see when the arla is removed, there it is, standing there, this chesed, which is a 28 with 248 lights and all these different kinds of metaphors. Shehi besod yud shal hayudin shal shem because now we got another one. That this yud that we're talking about, why a yud? What does it mean now? It's actually coming from the name Av, which is coming from Zair Anpin. So he previously said from the Moach of Zair Anpin. I said, no, that exactly. So he then says, so shall Av ha'oile chesed, which comes to the gematria of chesed. That yud in Yud Vav Daled. He said, but before the arla is removed, so that you don't see the tip of chesed, even inside the yisod. So therefore it's not called chesed. So in other words, it has to shine, it has to be out and shining. Then he says, come and see. So how do we know this? That only before this chesed is only revealed after there's been a bris. The lo iskre Avraham shlim b'chai chesed shahare Avraham babinu because Avraham babinu shahoya merkava the bechinas tipas chesed who really he was the vehicle for bringing the tip of the chesed. In other words, he's an agent from Zair Anpin through this ultimate chesed, a chesed kolayam, whatever. Elyon, which is Avraham Avinu, l'chovahoya nikra shalem b'zeh chesed ad izgalia yud ama, until this yud comes, which he said is from the first letter of the Yud Ke Vav Ke in Milui. Ad shenimo v'nigles etzlo hayud shel ha'ama shehi ataris yisod. And once it is revealed, then it's called complete. So at the time of the bris, that's when Avraham Avinu was called complete, because now, in other words, he was a person that was manufacturing chesed, and until this point, it really wasn't revealed in its actualization. This is the meaning of Zecher Shekasav She'amar HaKodesh Baruch Hu LaAvraham. Avon HaKodesh Baruch Hu LaAvraham b'mitzvahs mila. His chalak the father vehei tamim. So walk before me, and you're going to wind up being pure. Pirish his chalak the father b'mitzvahs mila. Do this. And I guess, walk before me and do this mitzvah. This will make you pure. Kolom tamim mamish, really pure, really perfect. He said of the fish Naasa Avraham Shalem Mamish Bebidazas, and they made it completely and totally complete in his midos. Because this is what he was always becoming. The tipas of chesed al because now that is who he is. He carries this within him. So there Avraham is also the gematria of Ramach, and all sorts kind of pieces together. He's the carrier of the tipa. His gematria is Ramach. Ramach Chasadim, which is the secret of the 240 Chasadim, Akolulim Betipa El, as we said previously. Ki Osnis Allah Avraham Vabinda the darkest Tipas of Chesed, because that's when Avraham he went up into this drop of Chesed, and it became the Chesed, this word we have now, this Chesed Elyon. But the thing is, the tipa needs a kli. It needs, and once again, the kli is also an agent ismatus. So it needs a kli in order to be able to transfer it. L'kach tzivach hakodesh baruch hu la'avraham v'bida the molva l'hasech ha'arlach bin ha'taras yisod. That's the reason why it needs a kli that's just as perfect as it is. To remove that arla and to make it possible for ataras yisod. Kedei the galos as ataras yisod shulakli shachas tipas chesed, in order to be able to extend out or pour out these drop of chesed. V'oz yuchol his galos gam tipas chesed, and then you see that you could also reveal this drop of chesed. So anyway, that's the shir for today, and actually, it's very, very interesting, and it contradicts to something that I really never did understand. Is that we're talking about in Shemona Esrei, when we're doing those brachos at the beginning, we're bringing the mid nukva and specifications here. She's down at the bottom below the yisod of Zair Anpin, and here we're talking about something very different. We're talking about she's being built through this hole that's in the chest of Zair Anpin, and so needs to be discovered. Thank you very much for learning with me today. I've just got this hassle kind of get back over here, so I'll do the best I can. Kol tov. Wow, wait, what is it here?